Would you dare to trust something that promises to transform your life forever, but at an unknown price? In the bustling city of Kalima, Madame Leia, a renowned wig stylist, offered good fortune to her clients, without them knowing the dark price they would pay. My name is Naya, and it all started on an ordinary day, under Kalima's scorching sun, when I decided to take my favorite wig to the famous Leia's beauty salon. That wig had a story. It was a gift from my mother before she passed away, and although it was worn out, it held immense sentimental value. The streets were as lively as always, and rumors about Madame Leia were the talk of every corner. "She's a wig magician," the women at the market said. "You bring her a mess, and she gives it back looking brand new." I admit I was reluctant to entrust her with something so precious, but the persistence of my best friend Zara convinced me. "Trust me, Naya. That woman has magic hands. Besides, you have nothing to lose," she said. Walking into Madame Leia's salon felt like stepping into another world. The walls were adorned with antique mirrors and shimmering fabrics that reflected a warm glow. Soft traditional music filled the air, but the most striking thing was Madame Leia's gaze. She was a middle-aged woman with an aura that blended wisdom and mystery. "One wig at a time, dear," she said with a calculated smile when I handed her my bag. As I placed it in her hands, I noticed something strange. The air in the room seemed to grow heavier. Before I left, Madame Leia reminded me of her rule in a grave tone. "Open the bag only when you're sure and in your home." I didn't understand why those words sent a chill down my spine, but I decided not to question it. When I got home that night, curiosity got the better of me. Why the insistence on not opening the bag beforehand? With trembling fingers, I undid the knot sealing the black bag. As I pulled the wig out, my heart stopped for a moment. It looked different, not just restored, but as if it radiated an otherworldly glow, almost alive. That moment my phone rang and my life changed forever. It was a call from the company I had been begging to review my proposal. "Congratulations, Naya. Your project has been approved. We'd love for you to join our team as soon as possible." I could hardly believe it. I had been struggling for months to land this opportunity, and now, as if by magic, the doors were opening. The following days felt like a dream. I met Jafari, a businessman who seemed like he belonged in a fairy tale. He was generous, charismatic, and, most importantly, deeply in love with me. Within weeks, I found myself living in a mansion, receiving lavish gifts, and feeling on top of the world. Everything I touched turned to gold. Whenever I wore the wig, good fortune followed. Successful deals, influential connections, and a bright future. Or so I thought. Then the dreams began. At first, they were vague and strange. Dark water surrounding me, a feeling of pressure on my chest. But soon they became terrifying. I saw myself sinking into a bottomless ocean, unable to breathe, fighting against an invisible force dragging me further and further from the surface. I woke up gasping, my heart racing, and each night it got worse. One day, while walking through the crowded market streets, I tried to give some money to a beggar named Dumo. His eyes, cloudy but filled with unsettling wisdom, fixed on mine as he refused my offer. "What you carry with you holds a darkness that will destroy everything you love," he said in a low voice. I shivered but dismissed his words as nonsense. Soon I realized they were anything but. First, Jafari was accused of fraud. Everything he owned was seized, including our mansion. Then my businesses, which had seemed invincible, began to collapse for no apparent reason. Bank accounts that were once full emptied, and my influential contacts disappeared. One night, returning to my tiny apartment, I understood that everything had started with that cursed wig. I decided to confront Madame Leia. I arrived at her salon late at night, When Kalima's hustle and bustle had quieted, I found an open window and slipped inside. The shop was empty, but at the back, a door was slightly ajar, letting a faint red light spill out. As I approached, I saw something I will never forget. Madame Leia was surrounded by bowls filled with bright red water, and in each one floated wigs. Her hands moved through the air as she muttered in a language I didn't recognize. The shadows in the room seemed to come alive, and a chill ran down my spine as I realized what I was witnessing. This wasn't ordinary magic. Madame Leia was summoning spirits, binding them to her clients' wigs. These spirits brought good fortune, yes, but only temporarily. Afterward, they demanded a price few could afford to pay. This discovery was just the beginning of a confrontation I would never forget. When I uncovered Madame Leia's dark secret, I knew I couldn't face her alone. I called my best friend Zara, whose wit and bravery had always inspired me, and Ao, a woman who had lost everything to the curses tied to Leia's wigs. Ao's gaze, hardened by pain, carried a determination that burned like an unquenchable flame. We gathered in my small apartment, devising a plan to infiltrate the shop. "We have to be quick and precise," Zara said, studying a makeshift sketch of the place. "We don't know what kind of defenses she might have." Ao, clutching a bottle of holy water she had acquired from a local church, added, "If we empty those bowls, maybe we can sever her connection to the spirits." That night, with our hearts pounding, we approached Leia's enchantments. Kalima's streets were eerily quiet, and only the faint glow of the moon lit our path. We managed to sneak in through a back window. Every step inside the shop seemed to thunder in the silence. We moved toward the door leading to the ritual chamber. When we opened it, the scene froze us in place. Madame Leia stood at the center of the room, surrounded by a circle of bowls filled with bright red water. Wigs floated in the liquid as if alive, pulsing with dark energy. She moved her hands gracefully, whispering in an ancient language. The shadows on the walls seemed to sway in rhythm with her words, as if they had a will of their own. "Now," Ao whispered, and we sprang into action. Zara began sprinkling holy water on the nearest bowls while I tried to distract Madame Leia. The moment the holy water touched the red liquid, a deafening explosion shook the room. Dark shadows erupted from the bowls, their glowing eyes and ever-shifting forms filling the air with an icy chill that pierced to the bone. "Repel them," Ao shouted desperately. "They have no power over us if we don't accept them." I remembered Dumo's words and clung to that idea. Zara and I began yelling, rejecting the shadows with all our might. At first, it was like fighting an unstoppable storm, but gradually, the shadows started to weaken, retreating in the face of our resistance. Meanwhile, Madame Leia screamed in fury, trying to regain control of the spirits. Her face contorted with rage, and her voice thundered through the chamber. "You don't know what you're doing," she roared. "This is bigger than you can imagine." But the spirits, now freed from her control, turned against her. They swirled around her like a dark tornado, dragging her toward the largest bowl in the center of the room. Madame Leia struggled, shouting words in her strange language, but it was futile. Her body began to dissolve in a spiral of shadows and red light as the spirits consumed her. Her screams were harrowing, echoing endlessly in the chamber, until they finally faded away. The central bowl emitted a blinding flash and then went utterly silent. The air grew heavy, and we stood motionless, breathing hard. Zara, her hands trembling, reached out to check on Ao. But the calm was short-lived. The remaining bowls began to crack, and the red liquid inside evaporated into thick clouds. The entire room seemed to collapse on itself. "We need to get out of here," I shouted, and we bolted for the exit. We barely escaped before a final explosion brought down part of the building. From the street, we watched the ruins of Leia's enchantments as red smoke rose into the night sky. A small crowd began to gather, drawn by the commotion. No one could imagine what had taken place inside. For us, everything had changed. Madame Leia's nightmare was over, but the scars of that night would stay with us forever. With Madame Leia gone, her shop reduced to ashes, Zara AO, and I knew our mission wasn't complete until all her victims were warned. Many, including me, began to regain what we had lost. However, I would never forget the lesson I had learned. Not everything that glitters is gold, and shortcuts can be perilous. This story serves as a reminder to be wary of things that seem too good to be true. If this tale resonated with you, share your thoughts in the comments. Do you believe luck can come at a hidden cost? I'd love to hear your reflections.